He stood there in a grey hoodie and worn-out sneakers, holding a first-class ticket that cost more than the gate agent made in a month. She looked at him, then at the ticket, and laughed. She didn't just deny him boarding. She shredded his dignity in front of 300 people. She called the police. She called him a fraud. She thought she held all the power because she wore a uniform and he wore a hood. But she forgot one thing. You never judge a book by its cover, and you certainly never accuse Marcus Thorne of lying. Because when Marcus reached into his pocket, he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small, laminated card that would end her career in exactly 10 seconds. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of JFK International Airport's Terminal 4. It was a miserable Tuesday evening in November. The air inside the terminal was thick with the smell of stale coffee, damp wool, and human frustration. Flight 492 to Chicago was already delayed by 45 minutes, and the tension at gate B32 was palpable. Marcus Thorne sat in the far corner of the waiting area, his back pressed against the cold glass. To the casual observer, Marcus looked like just another teenager drifting through the system. He was 19 years old, African-American, with a sharp jawline hidden beneath the shadow of a charcoal grey hoodie. He wore loose-fitting jeans and a pair of scuffed white Nikes that had seen better days. Over his ears sat a large pair of noise-cancelling headphones, isolating him from the cacophony of complaining passengers. He looked exhausted. His eyes were heavy, red-rimmed from 3 days of sleepless nights. He wasn't a troublemaker. He was a ghost, trying to be invisible. But Marcus wasn't just a tired teenager. He was the youngest paid intern in the history of Stratton & O'Connell, one of New York's most vicious corporate litigation firms. The backpack resting between his legs didn't contain dirty laundry or video games. It contained a sealed, encrypted hard drive and a physical case file regarding the state of New York versus Archer Pharmaceuticals. He had been sent to Chicago to hand-deliver these documents to a senior partner who was currently trying to settle a billion-dollar lawsuit. The firm had booked him in first class, not because they cared about his comfort, but because they needed him off the plane first and into a town car the second the wheels touched the tarmac in O'Hare. Marcus checked his watch. 6:15 p.m. Boarding was finally starting. He sighed, pulled his headphones down around his neck, and picked up his backpack. He just wanted to sleep. He just wanted to get this over with. He didn't know that standing between him and his seat was Brenda Vance. Brenda Vance was the lead gate agent for Regal Atlantic Airlines. She was in her late 50s, with stiff blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of authority and a uniform that was 2 sizes too tight. Brenda didn't view herself as a service provider. She viewed herself as the guardian of the gate. She had been working this desk for 20 years, and in her mind, she could spot a problem passenger from a mile away. Tonight, she was in a foul mood. The delay was messing up her metrics, her feet hurt, and she had just argued with a mother about the size of a diaper bag. She needed a win. She needed a target. As the overhead speaker crackled, Brenda grabbed the microphone. "We are now inviting our first-class passengers and Diamond Medallion members to board at this time. First class only." The crowd shifted. A few businessmen in suits rose from their seats. A wealthy couple with Louis Vuitton luggage moved forward, and Marcus Thorne stood up, adjusted his backpack, and walked toward the priority lane. Marcus fell in line behind a tall man in a navy suit. He kept his head down, clutching his boarding pass, a paper printout, because his phone had died an hour ago. He was tired, hungry, and his mind was still running over the legal briefs he'd been proofreading for 48 hours straight. The man in the navy suit scanned his pass. Brenda smiled, a sugary, fake expression. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Enjoy your flight." Mr. Henderson passed through. Marcus stepped up to the podium. He didn't say anything. He just extended his hand, offering the paper boarding pass with the QR code facing up. Brenda didn't look at the paper. She looked at Marcus's shoes, then his jeans, then the hoodie. Finally, her eyes landed on his face. The smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of cold, practiced suspicion. "Economy boarding hasn't started yet," Brenda said, her voice loud enough to carry over the murmuring crowd. "You need to step back and wait for Group 5. Marcus blinked, confused. "I'm not in Group 5, he said softly, his voice rough from disuse. "I'm in first class, seat 2A. Brenda let out a short, derisive snort. She didn't take the paper from his hand. She barely even glanced at the bold letters that said, "First Class." "Sir," she said, using the word like a weapon, "the first-class cabin is fully booked today. It's for our premium flyers. If you try to cut the line, I'm going to have to move you to the very end of the boarding process. Step aside." "I'm not cutting the line," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. He knew the drill. He knew how this looked. He had been profiled before, in stores, on the street, even at his own university. But he was too tired to fight. "Look at the ticket, please. My name is Marcus Thorne." "I don't need to look at the ticket to know you're in the wrong place," Brenda snapped. She crossed her arms over her chest. "We have a lot of people trying to pull scams with Photoshop these days, printing out fake passes to get free drinks. It's not happening on my watch." The line behind Marcus was growing. A woman in a cashmere sweater sighed loudly. "Come on, let's go." "I bought this ticket," Marcus said, his grip tightening slightly on the paper. "Well, my company did. Scan the code. If it rejects, I'll step aside. But you have to scan it." Brenda leaned over the podium, her face inches from his. "I don't have to do anything. You are disrupting the boarding process. I'm asking you one last time. Go sit down. Wait for Group 5, or I will invalidate your ticket entirely." "Scan the code," Marcus insisted. He wasn't moving. Brenda's face turned a splotchy red. She snatched the paper out of his hand, but instead of placing it under the scanner, she held it up to the light, squinting at it theatrically. "See this?" she announced, turning to the line of impatient, wealthy passengers behind him. "Look at the pixelation on the logo. It's a fake. He printed this off a home computer." "It's a PDF printout," Marcus argued. "That's how they look." "It's a forgery," Brenda declared. She crumpled the paper in her fist. The sound of the paper crunching was like a gunshot in the quiet terminal. Marcus's eyes went wide. That was his boarding pass. That was his proof. "You just destroyed my ticket," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. The exhaustion was fading, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was a violation. "I confiscated a fraudulent document," Brenda corrected him, throwing the crumpled ball into the trash bin behind her desk. "Now step away from the podium before I call security." The atmosphere at Gate B32 shifted from annoyance to spectacle. People stopped looking at their phones. They were watching the show. "You can't do that," Marcus said, stepping closer to the desk. "Retrieve that ticket. Now." "Back up!" Brenda shrieked, recoiling as if he had raised a fist. "He's being aggressive. I need help over here." A murmur ran through the crowd. From the back of the line, a man shouted, "Just do what she says, kid." Another woman whispered, "I saw him loitering earlier. He looked suspicious." But not everyone was on Brenda's side. A young woman near the front, holding a baby, looked horrified. "He just asked you to scan it," she said timidly. Brenda ignored her. She grabbed the landline phone on her desk and punched in a code. "Operations, this is Brenda at B32. I have an unruly passenger refusing to leave the gate area. He's aggressive and attempted to board with fraudulent documents. Send PD, immediately." She slammed the phone down and looked at Marcus with a smug sense of triumph. You wanted to play big shot? Now you can explain it to the police. Marcus took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a second, centering himself. In his mind, he wasn't at JFK anymore. He was in the courtroom. Facts, evidence, leverage. What is your last name? Marcus asked calmly. Excuse me? Your name tag says Brenda. I want your last name for the record. You don't get my name, Brenda spat. You get to remain silent. Suddenly, the door to the jet bridge opened. A tall, silver-haired man in a pilot's uniform stepped out, drawn by the commotion. It was Captain Miller. What's the problem here, Brenda? The captain asked, looking between the crumpled teenager and the red-faced agent. This kid is trying to force his way into first class with a fake ticket, Brenda explained, playing the victim perfectly. I told him to wait, and he got in my face. I've called Port Authority. The captain looked at Marcus. He saw the hoodie. He saw the clenched jaw. He sighed. Son, if you don't have a ticket, you need to leave the airport. We don't have time for this. I have a ticket, Marcus said, looking the pilot in the eye. She threw it in the trash. The captain frowned, looking at Brenda. You threw it away. It was fake, Dave. I know a fake when I see one. I'm not scanning a fake ticket and glitching the system just to humor a delinquent. At that moment, the crowd parted. 2 Port Authority police officers were jogging down the concourse. One was a heavy-set man named Officer Kowalski, his hand resting on his belt. The other was younger, Officer Reynolds. All right, break it up, Kowalski boomed, stepping into the circle of space around Marcus. Who's the problem? Brenda pointed a manicured finger straight at Marcus's chest. Him! He's refusing to leave. He's harassing staff, and he's using forged documents. Kowalski turned to Marcus. He didn't ask for Marcus's side of the story. He moved into Marcus's personal space, using his size to intimidate. Turn around, Kowalski ordered. Hands behind your back. I haven't done anything wrong, Marcus said, planting his feet. I am a ticketed passenger. I said turn around, Kowalski barked, grabbing Marcus's shoulder and spinning him. He kicked Marcus's legs apart and slammed him against the side of the podium. The crowd gasped. Phones were out now. Everyone was recording. You are making a mistake, Marcus said, his cheek pressed against the laminate counter. I am asking you to check the manifest. My name is Marcus Thorne. Shut up, Kowalski said, snapping the handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. The cold metal bit into his skin. You're under arrest for trespassing and disturbing the peace. Brenda watched with a smile that could cut glass. Make sure you check his bag, she added helpfully. He's probably got drugs in there too. Officer Reynolds picked up Marcus's backpack. Be careful with that, Marcus said, struggling slightly against the cuffs. That bag contains privileged legal materials belonging to Stratton and O'Connell. If you open it without a warrant, you are violating attorney-client privilege. Kowalski laughed. A deep, belly laugh. Attorney-client privilege? What, are you a lawyer now? You look like you're 12. I am a legal intern, Marcus corrected, and I am on official court business. Yeah, and I'm the King of England, Kowalski mocked. He patted Marcus down. He found a wallet in Marcus's back pocket. Let's see who you really are. Kowalski flipped open the worn leather wallet. He pulled out a standard New York State driver's license. Marcus Thorne, address in Queens, Kowalski read. He looked at Brenda. Well, the name matches what he said. He probably stole the ID too, Brenda said, doubling down. Or he just memorized the name on the ticket he stole. Wait, Marcus said. Look in the hidden slot behind the credit cards. There is a second ID. Kowalski paused. He looked at Marcus, then back at the wallet. He dug his thick fingers into the tight leather slot behind the Visa card. He felt something rigid, thicker than a credit card. He pulled it out. The terminal went quiet. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a white card with a heavy gold holographic seal of the State of New York Unified Court System. Below the seal, in bold black letters, it read, "Official Court Personnel." Below that, "Marcus Thorne, Special Legal Liaison, Office of the District Attorney." But that wasn't what made Kowalski freeze. It was the silver clip attached to the ID. The clip was stamped with a federal badge number. Kowalski looked at the card. Then he looked at the driver's license. Then he looked at the boy in the hoodie he currently had handcuffed against a desk. "What is this?" Kowalski whispered. "I am a court-appointed liaison for a federal case," Marcus said, his voice clear and icy. "I am transporting sensitive evidence to Chicago under the protection of the Southern District of New York. Hindering my travel is a federal offense. Detaining me without cause is a federal offense. And destroying my travel documents." Marcus turned his head as far as he could to look at Brenda. "Is a felony." Brenda's face went from red to a pale, sickly white. She took a step back, bumping into the trash can. "Officer," Marcus said, "please remove these handcuffs. And then, I would like you to retrieve my boarding pass from that trash can, because I'm going to need it for the lawsuit I'm filing against Regal Atlantic Airlines tomorrow morning." Kowalski fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. He uncuffed Marcus so fast he almost dropped the keys. I didn't know," Kowalski stammered. "She told us you were trespassing." Marcus rubbed his wrists. He stood up to his full height. He didn't look like a tired teenager anymore. He looked like a shark who smelled blood. He fixed his hoodie. Then he turned to Brenda. "You said my ticket was fake," Marcus said calmly. "Officer Reynolds, would you mind retrieving the evidence from the bin?" Officer Reynolds, looking terrified, reached into the trash can. He pulled out the crumpled ball of paper. He flattened it out on the counter. He pulled out a scanner gun from the desk. Brenda was too paralyzed to stop him, and beeped the QR code. Beep! The computer screen flashed green. "Passenger, Thorne, Marcus. Status, first class. Seat, 2A, boarding approved." The green light bathed Brenda's face in a ghostly glow. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Now," Marcus said, picking up his backpack, "I'm going to make a phone call." The silence at gate B32 was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a car crash. Officer Kowalski stepped back, his hand hovering near his belt, not out of aggression, but out of a sudden, dawning realization that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Marcus Thorne didn't look at the police. He didn't look at the crowd of passengers recording him with their iPhones. He looked strictly at his phone screen as he dialed a number from memory. He put the phone to his ear. It rang once, twice. "Thorne," a voice barked on the other end. It was a voice that sounded like gravel being crushed in a blender. It was Elias Stratton, senior partner at Stratton & O'Connell, a man who sued pharmaceutical giants for sport and had the personal cell phone numbers of 3 Supreme Court justices. "Mr. Stratton?" Marcus said, his voice calm but laced with a dangerous edge. "I have a situation at JFK. I'm at gate B32. I have been physically assaulted, handcuffed, and detained by Port Authority police at the instruction of a Regal Atlantic gate agent named Brenda Vance. They destroyed my boarding pass and accused me of fraud." "They did what?" Stratton's voice was so loud, Marcus actually had to pull the phone away from his ear. Even Brenda, standing 3 feet away, could hear the distortion of the scream. "They are currently preventing me from boarding Flight 492 with the Archer evidence," Marcus continued. They also profiled me. The agent refused to scan my code because, and I quote, "First class is for premium flyers." "Put me on speaker," Stratton commanded. "Now." Marcus tapped the speaker button and held the phone out like a grenade. "You're on, sir." "This is Elias Stratton." The voice boomed through the quiet gate area. "I represent the firm Stratton and O'Connell. Who is the ranking officer on the scene?" Officer Kowalski swallowed hard. He stepped forward, looking like a schoolboy caught cheating on a test. That would be me. Officer Kowalski, Port Authority." "Officer Kowalski," Stratton said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. "You are currently detaining a federal liaison carrying privileged court documents. If Mr. Thorne is not on that plane in 5 minutes, I will personally file a Section 1983 civil rights lawsuit against you, the Port Authority, and the City of New York. I will have your badge on my desk by Monday morning. Do you understand me?" We released him, sir," Kowalski stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "It was a misunderstanding. The agent, Ms. Vance, she stated—" "I don't care what she stated," Stratton roared. "I want the station manager there, now!" Brenda Vance was trembling. Her world, carefully constructed over 20 years of petty tyranny, was crumbling. She frantically waved at a man in a suit, speed-walking toward the gate. It was Stephen Clark, the Regal Atlantic Station manager. He looked flustered, adjusting his tie as he arrived. He saw the police, he saw the crowd, and he saw the young black man holding a phone that was shouting legal threats. I'm here," Clark said, breathless. He looked at Brenda. "What is going on?" "He's on the phone with his lawyer," Brenda whispered, tears welling in her eyes. He has a court ID." Clark turned to Marcus, putting on his best customer service smile. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, I'm Stephen Clark, the station manager. I understand there's been a bit of a mix-up. If you could just lower the phone, I'm sure we can—" "Mr. Clark," Marcus said, cutting him off. "This is Elias Stratton." Clark froze. He knew the name. Everyone in corporate New York knew the name. "Mr. Clark," Stratton's voice came from the phone. "Your employee just committed a felony in front of 300 witnesses. She destroyed a travel document and filed a false police report. Listen to me very carefully. If that plane leaves without Marcus Thorne, I will ground your entire fleet with injunctions until Christmas. Do you hear me?" "We are boarding him right now, Mr. Stratton," Clark said quickly, his face pale. "Right now. We will upgrade him to— well, he's already in first." "And Clark," Stratton added, "preserve the security footage. If a single frame is deleted, I'll own your airline." "Understood," Clark squeaked. "Marcus," Stratton said, his tone softening instantly. "Get on the plane. Deliver the package. We'll deal with the fallout when you land. Good work." The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone. He looked at Clark. "I'd like to board now." Clark turned to Brenda. His eyes were furious. "Get him on the plane, Brenda. Now." Brenda, shaking like a leaf, moved to the computer. She had to manually override the system because she had cancelled his ticket. Her fingers fumbled over the keys. She couldn't look at Marcus. She couldn't look at the wealthy passengers in line who were now staring at her with disgust. I need to reissue," Brenda stammered. "Just let him through," Clark snapped. "I'll override it from the back office." Clark gestured to the jet bridge. "Mr. Thorne, please, on behalf of Regal Atlantic, I apologize. We will be contacting you regarding compensation." Marcus didn't move. He looked at Officer Kowalski. "I need your badge number," Marcus said. "And yours." He pointed to Officer Reynolds. "And the incident report number." Kowalski pulled out a card and handed it over without a word. He looked defeated. He knew he had been used as a pawn by a prejudiced gate agent, and he had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. Marcus took the card. He adjusted his backpack. He looked at Brenda one last time. "You judged me because of my hoodie," Marcus said, quietly, so only she could hear. "Next time, check the manifest before you check my clothes." He turned and walked down the jet bridge. The crowd at the gate erupted into applause. A few people booed Brenda. She stood there, humiliated, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her whole. But the nightmare wasn't over. Not even close. The walk down the jet bridge felt like a mile. Marcus's adrenaline was crashing, leaving him shaking slightly. He took a deep breath, composing himself before stepping onto the aircraft. He entered the Boeing 777. The atmosphere inside was starkly different from the chaos at the gate. Soft jazz was playing. The air smelled of expensive cologne and leather. A flight attendant named Sarah, a young woman with a kind smile, greeted him. She had clearly been radioed about the situation. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, but she remained professional. "Mr. Thorne?" she asked gently. "Yes, ma'am. We have you in 2A. Let me take your coat." Marcus declined. "I'll keep the hoodie, thanks." He walked to seat 2A. It was a lie-flat pod, luxurious and private. The passengers in 1A and 2B, the businessman and the wealthy couple from the line, were already seated. They looked at him differently now. There was no suspicion in their eyes, only respect, and perhaps a little fear. They had seen him dismantle the staff with a single phone call. Marcus sat down, placing the backpack with the hard drive securely between his feet. He buckled his seatbelt. He just wanted the plane to take off. He closed his eyes. But the plane didn't move. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The intercom clicked on. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. We are just finishing up some final paperwork at the gate. We apologize for the delay and expect to push back shortly." Marcus opened his eyes. He had a bad feeling. Suddenly, the movement at the front of the cabin caught his eye. Stephen Clark, the station manager, was boarding the plane. And trailing behind him, looking like she was walking to the gallows, was Brenda Vance. Marcus stiffened. Why were they on the plane? Clark walked straight to seat 2A. He was holding a clipboard and a pen. He knelt down in the aisle, bringing himself to Marcus's eye level. Brenda stood behind him, wringing her hands, her face blotchy and red. "Mr. Thorne," Clark said, his voice a hushed whisper so the other first-class passengers wouldn't hear. "So sorry to disturb you again." "What is this?" Marcus asked, eyeing the clipboard. "Standard procedure," Clark lied smoothly. "Because there was a security incident involving law enforcement, we just need you to sign a verification of incident resolution form. It just states that you were allowed to board and that you have no immediate medical injuries from the handcuffing." Clark held out the pen. "Just a quick signature so we can close the gate and get you to Chicago." Marcus looked at the document. It was dense text, single-spaced. He scanned the first paragraph. His eyes narrowed. "The undersigned hereby agrees to release Regal Atlantic Airlines and its employees from all liability, waives right to future litigation, accepts a travel voucher of $500 as full and final settlement." It wasn't a verification form. It was a settlement release. They were trying to trick him into signing away his right to sue before the plane even took off. They knew if he signed this, Elias Stratton couldn't do a thing. Marcus looked up at Clark. Then he looked at Brenda. Brenda was biting her lip, looking desperate. She needed him to sign this. If he signed this, she might keep her job. "You think I'm stupid," Marcus stated. It wasn't a question. "Excuse me?" Clark blinked, his smile faltering. This isn't a resolution form, Marcus said, his voice rising loud enough for the man in 1A to hear. This is a liability waiver. You're trying to trick me into settling for a $500 voucher. It's just standard language. Clark tried to interrupt. No, it's not, Marcus snapped. You are holding this plane hostage to coerce me into signing a legal document without my attorney present. That is coercion. And it's another lawsuit. Marcus pushed the clipboard away. Get that out of my face. I'm not signing anything. Clark's face hardened. The nice guy act dropped. Mr. Thorne, if you don't sign the form, we can't clear the flight for departure. The police report is open. We need to close the incident. Then call the police back, Marcus challenged. Drag me off the plane again. See what happens. The cabin was deadly silent. The wealthy passengers were watching intently. The man in 1A, a corporate shark himself, leaned over. He's right, the passenger in 1A said to Clark. You can't hold the flight for a waiver. That's illegal. Get off the plane and let us fly. Clark was sweating now. He was losing control. He turned to Brenda, hissing, I told you to fix this. I didn't know he would read it, Brenda cried out, her voice cracking. Suddenly, a flight attendant, Sarah, walked up to the group. She looked nervous but determined. She held a sleek, wireless cabin phone in her hand. Mr. Clark, Sarah said, priority call for you on the flight deck line. It's urgent. Not now, Sarah, Clark snapped. I'm dealing with a passenger. Sir, Sarah said, her voice firm. It's the CAO, Mr. Pendergast. He's on the line personally. The colour drained from Stephen Clark's face. Robert Pendergast was the CEO of Regal Atlantic. He was a man who never dealt with day-to-day operations unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Clark stood up, his knees shaking. He took the phone. This is Clark. Marcus watched as Clark listened. He didn't say a word for 30 seconds. As he listened, his eyes moved from Marcus to the clipboard, and finally, to Brenda Vance. Brenda seemed to sense the shift. She took a step back. Mr. Clark? Clark swallowed. Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, immediately. Yes, I see. Clark handed the phone back to Sarah. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. He turned to Marcus, his expression completely defeated. Mr. Thorne, Clark said, his voice devoid of any arrogance. Please accept my deepest apologies. There is no need to sign the form. The CIO sends his personal regards. Then Clark turned to Brenda. His face was grim. Brenda, he said, his voice echoing in the quiet cabin. Yes, Stephen, she whispered. Give me your badge. Brenda gasped. She clutched the plastic ID card clipped to her uniform. What? Mr. Pendergast was watching the live stream, Clark said flatly. Someone in the gate area streamed the entire arrest on TikTok. It has 3 million views. The board of directors is watching it. Clark held out his hand. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. You are not to return to the gate. You are to be escorted off the airport property. You can't do this here, Brenda shrieked, the tears finally spilling over. I have 20 years. He was wearing a hoodie. How was I supposed to know? Give me the badge, Brenda, Clark demanded. Trembling, sobbing, Brenda unclipped her badge. She dropped it into Clark's hand. She looked at Marcus, her eyes filled with hate and sorrow. She wanted to scream at him, but she had no voice left. Sarah, Clark said to the flight attendant, please ask the officers at the door to escort Ms. Vance off the aircraft. Officer Kowalski and Reynolds, who had been waiting on the jet bridge, stepped onto the plane. They took Brenda by the arms, gently but firmly. Come on, Brenda, Kowalski said softly. Let's go. As Brenda was led away, doing the walk of shame past the first-class passengers she had tried to protect from Marcus, nobody said a word. There was no applause this time, just the cold, hard reality of karma hitting a target with precision. Clark looked at Marcus one last time. "We will be crediting your account with 500,000 miles, Mr. Thorne. Enjoy your flight." Clark turned and fled the plane. Marcus exhaled, sinking into the leather seat. The door closed. The engines whined to life. He looked out the window as the plane began to push back. He saw a small figure in a regal Atlantic uniform standing on the tarmac, being led into a police cruiser. It was Brenda. He didn't feel happy. He didn't feel triumphant. He just felt tired. But as the plane taxied toward the runway, his phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Elias Stratton. "Check your email. The CEO didn't just fire her. He wants to make you an offer." Marcus smiled for the first time that day. The wheels lifted off the ground, leaving the rain and the prejudice of New York behind. The cabin of Flight 492 was a sanctuary of engineered silence and soft, ambient lighting. At 35,000 feet, the world below seemed abstract, a grid of glowing cities and dark patches of farmland. But inside Seat 2A, Marcus Thorne was not feeling peaceful. He was vibrating with a strange, electric energy that had nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the realization that his life had bifurcated. There was the life he lived before 6 p.m. this evening, the life of an invisible, hard-working student from Queens, and the life he was currently hurtling toward at 500 miles per hour. For the first hour of the flight, Marcus stared at the darkened window, watching his own reflection. He saw the same hoodie, the same tired eyes, but the way the flight attendants moved around him had shifted. It wasn't just polite, it was deferential, bordering on fearful. Sarah, the flight attendant who had witnessed the confrontation, stopped by every 15 minutes. She didn't just ask if he needed water. She brought him a bottle of sparkling water, imported from Italy, and a warm towel, placing them down as if they were offerings to a volatile deity. "Mr. Thorne," she whispered, leaning in slightly. "I just wanted to let you know. The captain has disabled the seatbelt sign for you specifically. If you need to stretch your legs, please feel free. And we've blocked the lavatory in the front for your exclusive use." Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you, Sarah." "And," she hesitated, glancing toward the galley where the other attendants were whispering, "I just wanted to say, what happened back there? With Brenda? I've worked with her for 6 years. She's always been like that. We were all terrified of her. Thank you for standing up." She slipped away before he could respond. It was the first crack in the dam. Marcus finally decided to turn on his phone. He had enabled the Do Not Disturb mode before the confrontation, a habit from his days in the law library. He pressed the side button. The screen illuminated. The phone didn't just buzz, it convulsed. It locked up immediately, the processor unable to handle the sheer influx of data. Notifications were cascading down the screen in a blur of banners. Instagram, Twitter, text messages, news alerts, emails. It looked like the Matrix Code, a waterfall of digital noise. It took a full 2 minutes for the device to stabilize. When it did, Marcus saw the numbers. 422 missed calls, 190 new text messages, Instagram 99 plus notifications, follower count 450k. Marcus felt a cold sweat prickle the back of his neck. He opened Twitter first. The trending topics list for the United States stared back at him. 1. Nahona boycott Regal. 2. Dancer's Gate B3 2. Tar 3. The kid with the badge. 4. Brenda Vance. 5. Fire Kowalski. He tapped the top hashtag. The first post was a video with 14 million views. It had been posted by a user named Kyle Tosh Vlogs, evidently the teenager who had been standing 3 feet behind Marcus in the queue. Marcus put in his earbuds and pressed play. The video was shaky, vertical footage, but the audio was crystal clear. He watched himself, his posture rigid, his voice calm, as Brenda screamed about the fake ticket. He watched Officer Kowalski slam him against the podium. The camera zoomed in on Brenda's smug face, capturing the exact moment she said, "He's probably got drugs in there too." And then, the climax. The video captured the silence when the gold badge came out. It captured the look of absolute, soul-crushing terror on Brenda's face when Marcus mentioned the felony. The comment section was a war zone, and Regal Atlantic was losing on every front. Fuss Justice Warrior 99. I've been flying Regal for 10 years, just cancelled my platinum membership. This is disgusting. For Legal Eagle. The way he laid out the law while in handcuffs, that kid is a prodigy. That's not just memorization. That's composure under fire. Future Supreme Court Justice right there. South Cheetown Flyer. I'm at O'Hare right now, waiting for this flight to land. There are news crews setting up at the arrival gate. This kid is a hero. News crews. Marcus looked at the timestamp. The video had been up for 3 hours. The world knew his face. The world knew his name. He switched to his email app. He needed to find the signal in the noise. He filtered by VIP contacts. There, sitting at the top, was the email Elias Stratton had warned him about. Subject: urgent, confidential, settlement proposal, and formal apology. From Robert Pendergast, Office of the CEO, Regal Atlantic Airlines. Marcus took a deep breath. He knew what a settlement offer looked like in a textbook, but he had never seen one directed at him. He opened the email. The text was devoid of the usual corporate fluff. It was written in the stark, terrified language of damage control. Dear Mr. Thorne, I am writing to you from the corporate headquarters in Atlanta. By now, you are aware of the incident involving our staff member, Ms. Brenda Vance, and the Port Authority Police. I have viewed the footage personally. There are no words in the English language that can adequately express my shame and fury at what occurred. You were profiled. You were mistreated. You were criminalized for existing. It was a failure of every value this company claims to uphold. Ms. Vance's employment has been terminated, effective immediately. We have issued a lifetime ban on her travel privileges. Furthermore, we are filing a formal complaint against the Port Authority officers involved. However, we know that justice is not just about punishment. It is about restitution. We wish to resolve this matter quietly and amicably, without the need for prolonged litigation that would only serve to extend your trauma. Attached is a formal settlement agreement. In summary, Regal Atlantic is prepared to offer 1. 250,000 souls are tax-free for emotional distress, unlawful imprisonment, and reputational damage. 2. Lifetime Global One. Status for you and a companion, valid on all partner airlines. 3. Full educational endorsement. Regal Atlantic will fund your tuition for any graduate program you choose to pursue. Please consider this a starting point. We await your response. Marcus read the number again. $250,000. His mother, a nurse's aide who worked double shifts at Mount Sinai Hospital, made $45,000 a year. This was 5 years of her life, handed to him in an email because a woman didn't like his hoodie. It was enough to pay off the mortgage on their small row house in Queens. It was enough to fix the leaking roof. It was enough to make sure she never had to pick up an overtime shift again. He felt a lump form in his throat. He screenshotted the email and sent it to Elias Stratton via iMessage. Marcus, is this real, or are they trying to lowball me? The response came instantly. The 3 dots bubbled for only a second. Stratton, it's real, but it is absolutely a lowball. They are terrified of a jury trial in New York. A jury would look at that video and give you $10 million just to spite them. But a trial takes 5 years. Pendergast wants this news cycle to end by tomorrow morning. Marcus, What do I do? Stratton. We counter. We ask for 500,000. We ask for a seat on their civilian oversight board so you can actually change their policies. And we demand they donate another $100,000 to the Legal Aid Society of New York in your name. Send me a thumbs up, and I'll have their general counsel crying by midnight. Marcus stared at the phone. He typed a thumbs up emoji and hit send. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He wasn't just an intern anymore. He was a player. The landing at O'Hare was smooth, but the reception was unprecedented. As the plane taxied, the captain came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that everyone remain seated once we arrive at the gate to allow a passenger with a priority connection to deplane first. The passengers grumbled, but Marcus knew who it was for. When the door opened, it wasn't a gate agent who walked on. It was a woman in a sharp black suit, wearing a headset. She walked straight to seat 2A. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice hushed. My name is Elena. I'm the head of VIP services for O'Hare. Please leave your bag. My colleague will carry it. Marcus stood up. He grabbed his backpack. He wasn't letting the hard drive out of his sight, and followed her. As he stepped off the plane, he saw the flashes. Through the glass of the terminal, dozens of cameras were flashing. Reporters were shouting, Marcus! Marcus! Look this way! Are you suing? Elena guided him away from the glass, down a set of stairs onto the tarmac itself. A black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows was idling next to the nose of the jet. We're bypassing the terminal to avoid the press, Elena explained, opening the rear door. Mr. Stratton has arranged for your transport directly to the firm's Chicago offices. Marcus slid into the leather interior. The car smelled of vanilla and money. As they pulled away, watching the chaos of the terminal fade into the distance, Marcus realized the profound irony. 4 hours ago, they had called the police to drag him away. Now, they were using a private motorcade to smuggle him out. The ride into downtown Chicago was a blur of city lights. The car pulled up to the Willis Tower. It was 11:30 p.m., but the lights on the 80th floor were blazing. Marcus walked into the conference room of Stratton, O'Connell and Associates. The room was filled with senior partners, paralegals, and crisis management experts. The air was thick with the smell of takeout coffee and high-stakes adrenaline. When Marcus entered, the room fell silent. Elias Stratton, a man who usually looked like he wanted to bite the head off a shark, stood up from the head of the table. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, not as a subordinate, but as a survivor. Gentlemen, Stratton boomed, his voice breaking the silence. The Rainmaker has arrived. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was genuine, raucous cheering. These were lawyers. They loved a win. And Marcus had just handed them the easiest win of the decade. Stratton walked over and placed a heavy hand on Marcus's shoulder. You possess a quality that cannot be taught in law school, Marcus. It's called poise. Most men would have swung at that cop. You stood still. That stillness is going to pay for your entire future. Marcus handed over the encrypted hard drive. The Archer evidence, sir. Forget the evidence, Stratton laughed, tossing the drive to a junior associate without looking. We settled the Archer case an hour ago. The pharmaceutical company saw the news about you. They knew you were our intern. They figured if our interns are this tough, they didn't want to go to trial against the partners. They folded. Stratton poured a glass of whiskey and slid it across the mahogany table, then replaced it with a bottle of water when he remembered Marcus's age. We counted Regal Atlantic, Stratton said, his eyes twinkling. They accepted the $500,000. The funds will be wired to your trust account by 9 a.m. You're a rich man, Marcus. Marcus sat down. He didn't feel rich. He felt exhausted. But as he looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, he finally allowed himself to smile. The fallout was not a gentle rain. It was a hurricane. In the weeks that followed, the internet dismantled Brenda Vance's life with the efficiency of a demolition crew. The viral video had stripped away her anonymity. She wasn't just a gate agent anymore. She was the face of discrimination. Regal Atlantic, desperate to stop their stock price from free-falling, threw her to the wolves. They released a public statement detailing her termination for gross violation of ethical standards. When she applied for unemployment benefits, the airline contested it, citing misconduct. She was denied. 6 months later, an investigative journalist tracked her down. She had lost her condo in Queens due to missed payments. She was living in a small rental in New Jersey, working the night shift at a toll booth on the turnpike. The journalist noted that she looked 10 years older. When asked if she had a message for Marcus Thorne, she simply slammed the toll booth window shut and turned her back. She was trapped in a glass box, just as she had tried to trap him. But this time, there was no first-class ticket out. Officer Kowalski fared no better. The internal affairs investigation, fueled by the scrutiny of the district attorney's office, who were very unhappy about their liaison being handcuffed, uncovered a history of complaints against Kowalski. He had a habit of aggressive detention with minority passengers. He was given a choice: face a grand jury indictment for civil rights violations, or retire immediately with a stripped pension. He chose the latter. He lost his gun, his badge, and his authority. He was last seen working security at a shopping mall, guarding teenagers who laughed at him. And Regal Atlantic? They paid. They paid Marcus, they paid the Legal Aid Society, and they spent $10 million on a mandatory bias training program that every employee from the CEO down to the baggage handlers had to attend. Every time a staff member grumbled about the training, they whispered the name Marcus Thorne. He had changed the culture of an entire corporation without ever raising his voice. 1 year later, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The autumn leaves were turning gold on the campus of Harvard Law School. The air was crisp, smelling of old books and new ambitions. Marcus sat in the back row of the 1L Constitutional Law Lecture Hall. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a fresh, charcoal grey hoodie, crisp dark jeans, and pristine sneakers. He had used the settlement money wisely. His mother was debt-free, living in a renovated home with a garden she finally had time to tend. He had invested the rest, creating a cushion that allowed him to study without the crushing weight of survival hanging over his head. The lecture hall was filling up. Students were pulling out MacBooks and adjusting their ties. Next to Marcus, a student sat down. He was wearing a polo shirt with a popped collar and boat shoes. He looked at Marcus, glanced at the hoodie, and gave a dismissive sniff. "Hey, man," the student said, his voice dripping with unearned confidence. "You might want to check your schedule. This is Con Law with Professor Dershowitz. The undergrad lectures are in the other building." It was happening again. The assumption, the judgment, the belief that a hoodie didn't belong in the halls of power. Marcus stopped typing. He turned slowly to face the student. He didn't feel the spike of adrenaline this time. He didn't feel the fear. He felt a calm, amusing pity. "I know exactly where I am," Marcus said softly. "Really?" The student smirked. "You don't look like a law student. You look like you're here to fix the projector." Before Marcus could respond, the heavy oak doors at the front of the hall swung open. The professor walked in, silencing the room. "Good morning, class," the professor boomed. "Before we begin, I want to introduce a special guest observer we have with us today. He is a first-year student, but he has already contributed more to the field of civil rights litigation than most of you will in your entire careers." The professor scanned the room. "Mr. Thorne, would you please stand?" Marcus stood up. The room went deadly silent. The student with the popped collar looked up at Marcus. His eyes went wide. He recognized the face. He had seen the video. Everyone had seen the video. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like he might faint. "Holy shit," the student whispered. "You're him." Marcus looked down at the student. He offered a small, kind smile. The smile of a man who held all the cards. "It's nice to meet you," Marcus said, loud enough for the surrounding students to hear. "And just a piece of advice for your legal career. Never judge a case by its cover. You never know when you're sitting next to the plaintiff." Marcus sat back down. He opened his laptop. The screen glowed, illuminating his face. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was Marcus Thorne, and he was just getting started. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you serve cold, hard justice. Marcus Thorne didn't just win a settlement. He dismantled a system of prejudice using nothing but his intelligence and his rights. He proved that true power isn't about how loud you scream, but about knowing exactly who you are when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Brenda and Kowalski thought they were breaking a fragile teenager. Instead, they forged a diamond. I want to know what you think. Was the $500,000 settlement enough? Or should Marcus have taken them to court for millions? Let me know your verdict in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this story of ultimate karma, please smash that like button. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Stay safe, stay smart, and always know your rights. I'll see you in the next video.